She worked quietly in his house for 3 years, keeping her head down. Then one night, he saw the bruises on her wrists, rope marks someone tried to hide. "Who left these marks?" he asked, his voice calm but deadly. She didn't know her answer would bring an entire criminal empire to its knees by midnight. The kitchen smelled like rosemary and regret. Adrian Moretti didn't believe in coincidences. Not when a woman who'd worked in his house for 3 years suddenly started wearing long sleeves in July. Not when she flinched every time a door opened too fast. And definitely not when he walked into his own kitchen at 9:30 on a Thursday night and caught her hiding her wrists under running water. "Working late, Lena?" She jumped. The plate she'd been scrubbing clattered against the sink's edge, and for half a second, Adrian saw it, purple and yellow bruises circling both wrists like ugly bracelets. Then she yanked her sleeves down so fast the wet fabric stuck to her skin. "Mr. Moretti," her voice came out steady, but her hands were shaking. "I didn't hear you come in." "I know." He moved closer, his Italian leather shoes silent against the marble floor. "That's twice this week you've stayed past 8. Something keeping you here?" Lena Torres had worked for the Moretti family since she was 22. She kept her head down, did her job, and never asked questions, which was exactly why Adrian had kept her around. In his line of work, loyalty was currency. Silence was gold. But right now, she wasn't being silent. She was lying. "Just catching up on inventory, sir. The new glassware shipment came in, and I wanted to make sure everything was." "Show me your wrist." The words dropped like stones into still water. Lena's face went pale. "Sir, I don't." "Lena," Adrian's voice never rose above conversational. He learned a long time ago that powerful men didn't need to shout. "I'm going to ask you one more time. Who left these marks?" For a moment, she just stared at him. Her dark eyes were wet, but no tears fell. Adrian had seen that look before, in soldiers who'd been captured, in men who'd made bad deals, in people who'd already accepted their fate. "I'm clumsy," she whispered. "I caught my wrists in the—" "Don't," he held up one hand. "I've seen rope burns before. I know what they look like. I know how long they take to heal. And I know the difference between an accident and a message." She closed her eyes. Adrian pulled out one of the kitchen stools, hand-carved walnut, imported from Milan, probably worth more than most people's cars, and sat down. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "How long?" "Mr. Moretti, please. It's nothing. I can handle."
"How
long?" Lena's shoulders sagged. She looked smaller suddenly, like the air had gone out of her. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Adrian felt something cold settle in his chest. 3 weeks, and he hadn't noticed. 3 weeks, and someone had been hurting one of his people right under his nose. He ran the Moretti organization with one unbreakable rule: you don't touch what's mine. His businesses, his properties, his people, they were all under his protection. It didn't matter if Lena was just the housekeeper. She worked in his home. She knew his routines. She'd served Christmas dinner to his mother. Someone had crossed a line. "Who?" Adrian asked. "I can't." "Names, Lena. Give me names, and this ends tonight." She shook her head. Her wet sleeves dripped water onto the floor. "You don't understand. If I tell you, they'll what? Come after you." Adrian leaned forward. "Do you know what I did before I started buying hotels and restaurants? Do you know why men like Carbone and Russo and half the city council take my calls at 3 in the morning?" Yes, her voice was barely audible. "Then you know that whoever did this, whoever thought they could touch someone under my roof, they made a mistake. A fatal 1 inch. Lena looked at him for a long moment. In the harsh kitchen lights, Adrian could see more than just the bruises now. There were dark circles under her eyes. A cut on her lower lip that she'd tried to hide with makeup. A tremor in her hands that had nothing to do with the cold water. "Just clumsy, sir," she said again, and this time her smile was so forced to hurt to look at. "I should finish up here. It's getting late." Adrian stood slowly. He could force the issue, call in Marco and Tony, have them persuade her to talk. But fear had a flavor, And right now Lena wasn't just scared of whoever had hurt her. She was terrified of what would happen if she spoke. That meant family. It always did. Go home, he said finally. Take tomorrow off. Paid. Sir, I really don't need. That wasn't a request. He walked to the kitchen door, then paused. Lena, the cameras in this house see everything. Every door, every window, every person who comes within 50 feet of this property. If you won't tell me who did this, I'll find out another way. He left her standing there, wet sleeves and terrified eyes, and walked through his too big house toward the security room. Vincent Vico Calabrese, his head of security and right-hand man for the past 8 years, was exactly where Adrian expected him to be, sitting at the wall of monitors, coffee going cold beside him, watching the feeds like he was paid to do. Boss Vico straightened in his chair. Everything okay? Pull up the last 2 weeks of exterior footage. Every camera. I want to see everyone who approached the property, looking for something specific. Adrian thought about those bruises, about rope burns that left marks for weeks, about a woman who'd rather lie to his face than name her attacker. Someone who doesn't belong here, he said. Vico's fingers flew across the keyboard. Any particular day? Start with 3 weeks ago. And Vico. Adrian's voice went quiet. When you find them, and you'll find them, I want to know everything. Where they live, who they work for, what they eat for breakfast. Vico nodded slowly. He'd worked for Adrian long enough to recognize that tone. How bad? He asked. Adrian looked at the monitors. 12 screens showing 12 different angles of his property, his empire, his world. Somewhere in those recordings was a face, a name, a threat that had walked right up to his door and left marks on someone under his protection. Bad enough, Adrian said, that by tomorrow morning, someone's going to wish they'd never been born. The footage began to roll. And in the kitchen, Lena Torres dried her hands on a towel, pulled her sleeves down one more time, and whispered a prayer for her brother. The footage was grainy, but Adrian didn't need HD to recognize trouble. 3:17 a.m., 16 days ago. The timestamp glowed green in the corner of the screen as Vico fast-forwarded through hours of empty driveway and rustling trees. Then movement. There, Adrian leaned forward. Stop. Vico froze the frame. 2 men stood at the back service gate, the one the delivery trucks used. They weren't trying to hide. That was the first thing Adrian noticed. They stood in full view of the camera, faces tilted up like they wanted to be seen. Zoom in. The image pixelated as Vico enlarged it, but the details were clear enough. Both men wore dark jackets, despite the summer heat. The taller one had a tattoo creeping up his neck. Adrian couldn't make out the design, but he didn't need to. He recognized the stance, the way they held themselves. These weren't amateurs. Run it forward. Slow. On screen, the shorter man pulled something from his pocket. A phone. He held it up, angled toward the house, and took a picture. Then another. Then he turned the phone around, showing the screen to his partner, and both men smiled. They're scouting, Vico muttered. Mapping the property. No, Adrian's jaw tightened. They already know the layout. Look at what he's pointing at. Vico squinted at the screen. The shorter man was gesturing, not at the main house, but at the small cottage behind it. The staff quarters, where Lena lived. Son of a bitch, Vico breathed. The footage continued. The tall man reached into his jacket, and Adrian's hand moved instinctively toward his hip before he remembered he was in his own security room. But the man didn't pull a weapon. He pulled out a piece of paper, white, folded once, and wedged it into the gate's lock mechanism. Then both men turned and walked away. Casual, unhurried, like they were leaving a restaurant after a nice meal. 30 seconds, Adrian said. They were here for 30 seconds. You want me to send someone to check the gate? It's been 16 days. Whatever they left is long gone. Adrian replayed the footage, studying their faces. But I want to know who they are. Send this to Carbone. He's got friends in every precinct from here to Boston. Someone knows these faces. Vico was already pulling out his phone. What about the girl? You think she knows them? Adrian thought about the way Lena had hidden her wrists, the forced smile, the terror in her eyes when he'd asked for names. She knows them, he said quietly. Question is, are they the ones who hurt her, or are they the ones who sent the message? Boss, if someone's moving on our people, we need to respond. Fast and loud. Show them what happens when. No, Adrian held up a hand. Not yet. Whoever these men work for, they're smart enough to hit close without hitting directly. They didn't touch property. Didn't make threats we can prove. They hurt a housekeeper, someone most organizations wouldn't even notice. But you noticed. Exactly, Adrian stood, his mind already working through possibilities. Which means either they're testing my responses, or they know something about Lena that makes her valuable leverage. He walked to the window, overlooking the grounds. Past the manicured lawn and Italian gardens, he could see the cottage. A single light burned in the upstairs window. Lena was still awake. Pull everything, Adrian said. Phone records, bank statements, social media. I want to know everywhere Lena's been in the last month. Everyone she's talked to. Every dollar she's spent. Adrian, Vico's voice carried a warning. She's been with us for 3 years. You really think she's mixed up in something? I think someone hurt her to send a message. And until I know what that message says, everyone's suspect. He turned back to the monitors. How many times did those men come back? Vico scrolled through the footage. Twice more. Same camera, same time, 3 a.m. Always at the service gate. Always when Lena would be asleep. Or when she'd be alone. Adrian felt that cold sensation again, the one that came right before violence. Someone had orchestrated this carefully. The timing, the location, the target. This wasn't random intimidation. This was personal. Check the interior cameras, he said. I want to see if Lena went near that gate after their visits. Vico pulled up a different set of feeds, the hallways, the kitchen, the staff areas. They watched in silence as days of footage compressed into minutes. Lena moving through her routines. Cleaning, cooking, living her quiet, careful life. Then, on the 4th day after the first visit, she appeared on the exterior camera. 4:30 a.m. She walked across the lawn in her bathrobe, straight to the service gate. She's checking for something, Vico said. On screen, Lena reached into the gate's lock mechanism, the exact spot where the man had left the paper, and pulled out a folded note. Her hands shook as she opened it. Even through the grainy footage, Adrian could see her face go white. She read it twice. Then she crumpled the paper, shoved it in her pocket, and ran back to the cottage. That's the day the bruises started, Adrian said softly. Look at the timestamp. 4 days later, she came to work wearing long sleeves. Vico rewound the footage, watching Lena's desperate sprint across the lawn. What do you think the note said? Adrian didn't answer. He was thinking about messages, about pressure points, about the kind of leverage that made a loyal employee lie to her employer's face. In his experience, there were only 3 things that made people betray themselves: greed, fear, or love. Lena lived simply. She didn't gamble, didn't spend lavishly, didn't have expensive habits. That ruled out greed. Fear was obvious. Those bruises were proof enough. Which left love. Pull her personnel file, Adrian said. I want to know about her family. Parents, siblings, cousins. Everyone. Already on it, Vico's fingers flew across the keyboard. Here. Emergency contact. Evan Torres. Brother. Age 24. Lives in. He trailed off. Where? Adrian prompted. Vico's face went dark. The warehouse district. Apartment above Rossi's auto body. The name hit Adrian like a fist to the gut. Rossi. The Rossi crew ran everything south of Brennan Avenue. Illegal gambling, loan sharking, protection rackets. And they've been pushing into Moretti territory for the last 6 months, testing boundaries, making noise. But they'd never struck directly. Never made a move bold enough to warrant retaliation. Until now. Son of a bitch, Adrian whispered. They're using her. Using her for what? Adrian looked at the frozen image on the screen. Lena, terrified, clutching that crumpled note. To get to me. The warehouse district looked worse at dawn than it did at midnight. Adrian sat in the back of his black Mercedes, watching junkies shuffle past boarded-up windows and graffiti-stained walls. This wasn't his territory, hadn't been for years, not since the Morettas had moved uptown into legitimate business. But he remembered these streets. Remembered when his father used to collect debts door to door with nothing but a baseball bat and a reputation. That's it. Marco, his driver, pointed to a 3-story building with peeling paint. Rossi's auto body. The kid lives upstairs. Adrian studied the structure. Ground floor was the garage, steel shutters pulled down, but he could see light leaking through the cracks. Someone was working early. Or they'd never stopped working. Vico, what did you find? Vico turned from the passenger seat, iPad in hand. Evan Torres, 24, high school dropout. Worked construction until he hurt his back last year. Now he does odd jobs, delivery driver, warehouse work, whatever pays cash. He swiped to another screen. And 3 months ago, he started showing up at underground poker games in Rossi territory. How much does he owe? Started small. 500 here, 1,000 there. But poker wasn't his problem. Vico pulled up a photo, grainy security footage from what looked like a basement. Young men crowded around a table, cash and cards scattered everywhere. 2 months ago, someone introduced him to the cage fights. Adrian's eyes narrowed. The cage fights were Rossi's newest venture, illegal MMA matches with no rules and no regulations. Desperate men fighting for cash, while even more desperate men bet on the outcome. The house always won. The fighters usually ended up in the hospital. Or worse. How much? Adrian asked again. $47,000. The number hung in the air like smoke. Jesus Christ, Marco Mater. How does a kid rack up that kind of debt? Easy. Vico swiped to another photo. Evan Torres, younger, smiling, arm around a pretty blonde girl. He was betting on himself. Won his first 3 fights. Made 12 grand. Then he got confident. Started borrowing money to bet bigger, thinking he could keep winning. Let me guess, Adrian said. He lost. Got knocked out in the 4th round. Broke his jaw. By the time he got out of the hospital, the interest had doubled his debt. Vico looked up from the iPad. That's when the Rossi crew started visiting his sister. Adrian felt his hands curl into fists. The math was simple, elegant, and vicious. Find someone desperate. Let them dig their own hole. Then use their family as collateral. They're not just using Lena for information, he said quietly. They're using her to pay his debt. What kind of information would they want? Marco asked. Adrian thought about his schedule, his routes, his meetings. The Moretti organization had gone legitimate on paper, but everyone knew the real money still moved in cash and favors. His shipping company moved more than furniture. His restaurants laundered more than dishes. If the Rossi crew knew his patterns, they could intercept shipments, undercut deals, hit him where it hurt most, his reputation for reliability. Everything, Adrian said. They want to know everything. And they're using Lena as their eyes inside my house. So, what's the play? Vico asked. We grab the kid, use him as leverage to draw out. No, Adrian's voice cut like a blade. The kid's a victim. Stupid, yes. But he didn't ask for this. Boss, with all due respect, that kid put your operation at risk. He got his sister hurt. $47,000 isn't pocket change. Someone's paying that bill, and right now it's you. Adrian knew Vico was right. In the old days, his father would have had Evan Torres dragged into an alley and taught a lesson with a tire iron. Quick, brutal, effective. But Adrian wasn't his father. We go talk to him, Adrian said. Just talk. Marco and Vico exchanged glances. Adrian, Vico said carefully. The Rossi crew owns this block. We roll up there, they're going to know about it in 5 minutes. Good. Let them know. Adrian opened the car door. Let them know I'm here for a conversation. Nice and civilized. And if they decide to make it less than civilized. Adrian adjusted his jacket, feeling the weight of the Glock holstered at his hip. Then we adjust accordingly. They cross the street, 3 men in expensive suits walking through a neighborhood where expensive meant dangerous. Eyes watched from doorways and windows. Somewhere, someone was already making a phone call. The door to the upstairs apartment was at the side of the building, next to a dumpster overflowing with trash.
Marco knocked.
Hard. Nothing.
He knocked again.
Evan Torres. Open up. A voice came from inside, muffled and scared. I told you I need more time. I'm working on it. We're not who you think we are, Adrian called out. Open the door, Evan. I want to talk about your sister. Silence. Then the sound of multiple locks turning. The door opened 6 inches, held by a chain. A young man's face appeared in the gap, narrow, unshaven, with a fading bruise along his jaw. His eyes went wide when he saw Adrian. He swallowed hard. You're Moretti. I am. And you're the reason Lena has rope burns on her wrists. Evan's face crumpled. Oh God. Oh Jesus, did they hurt her? I told them she didn't know anything. I swear I told them. Open the door. They're watching. If they see me talking to you, they already know I'm here. Adrian stepped closer. Right now, you've got 2 choices. You can open this door and have a conversation with me, or you can keep hiding and let your sister pay for your mistakes. What's it going to be? The chain rattled. The door opened. Evan Torres looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 months. His apartment was a disaster. Empty ramen cups, overdue bills, a mattress on the floor. On the wall, someone had spray-painted a message in red. Time's up. They came yesterday, Evan said, his voice shaking. Said if I don't have the money by Friday, they're going to make Lena pay in other ways. He looked at Adrian with desperate eyes. I never meant for this to happen. I thought I could win it back. I thought. You thought wrong. Adrian walked through the apartment, taking in every detail. How much have they gotten from Lena? What? Information. What has she told them? Evan's face went pale. Nothing. She wouldn't. They tied her up, Evan. They hurt her. What do you think they were asking her for? No, Evan shook his head frantically. No, Lena doesn't know anything about your business. She just cleans your house, He stopped. Looked at the floor. She what? Adrian's voice went quiet. When Evan looked up, there were tears in his eyes. She gave them the gate codes, he whispered. And your schedule. Where you go. When you leave. They wanted to know when the house would be empty. The room went cold. When? Adrian asked. Friday night. Evan's voice broke. They're planning something for Friday night. Adrian didn't go home. He went to the one place in the city where truth came easier than lies, the back room of Salvatore's, a restaurant he'd owned for 15 years. The kind of place where politicians ate lunch and criminals ate dinner, and everyone paid in cash. Lena sat across from him now, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the white tablecloth. She hadn't said a word since Marco picked her up from the cottage.
Hadn't asked why.
Hadn't resisted. She knew. Coffee. Adrian pushed a cup toward her. Salvatore made it fresh. The good stuff, not the swill I drink at home. She didn't reach for it. The room was small, just a table for chairs and a door that locked from the inside. No windows. No cameras. No record that this conversation was happening. Adrian had built his legitimate empire on transparency and contracts, but some business still required the old ways. Lena, he kept his voice gentle. I need you to tell me the truth now. All of it. Because in about 6 hours, I'm supposed to have dinner with the mayor and his wife at my estate. And according to your brother, that's when something very bad is supposed to happen. Her hands tightened in her lap. I went to see Evan this morning, Adrian continued. Nice kid. Scared out of his mind. Owes $47,000 to people who break bones for a living. He paused. You knew about the debt, didn't you? Yes, her voice was barely a whisper. How long? 2 months. He called me crying, said he'd made a mistake. Said these men were going to kill him if he didn't pay. A tear slid down her cheek. He's my baby brother, Mr. Moretti. Our parents died when he was 16. I raised him. I couldn't just let them hurt him. Adrian leaned back. So when they came to you with a deal, you took it. They said they'd forgive his debt. All of it. If I just gave them some information. Small things. Nothing that would hurt anyone. She finally looked up at him, eyes red. I didn't know what else to do. What did they ask for? At first, just your schedule. When you left for work. When you came home. They said they wanted to know when the house was empty, so they could. She trailed off. So they could what? They said they were planning a robbery. Some jewelry from your mother's collection. They said it was insured, that you'd never even miss it. Her voice cracked. I know it was wrong. I know I betrayed you. But they promised they wouldn't hurt anyone. Adrian studied her face. 3 years she'd worked for him. 3 years of loyalty, of discretion, of trust. And now this. What else did you give them? Lena hesitated. Lena, Adrian's voice dropped. I'm trying to help you. But I can't do that if you keep lying to me. The gate codes, she whispered. I changed them last week like you asked, and 2 wrote down the new ones. They took the paper from my cottage. What else? The security system. How it works. Which cameras cover what areas. When the guards change shifts. Adrian felt something sharp twist in his chest. You gave them everything they'd need to get inside. They said it was just for the jewelry. They said. They lied, Lena. He leaned forward. The Rossi crew doesn't rob houses. They're not thieves. They're soldiers. And you just gave them the keys to my castle. She started crying in earnest now, shoulders shaking.
I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry.
I didn't want to, but they had Evan and they showed me pictures of what they'd do to him if I didn't cooperate, and I thought if I just gave them what they wanted, they'd leave us alone. Adrian let her cry. He'd seen this before. Good people making bad choices, one compromise at a time. Fear was a better motivator than greed. Terror was better than both. The bruises, he said quietly. When did they start? Last week. I told them I couldn't do it anymore. That I'd given them enough. She touched her wrists unconsciously. They said I didn't get to decide when it was enough. They tied me up in my own cottage, said it was a reminder. Said next time they'd do worse. Did they say what they're planning for Friday?
No.
Just that it was important I make sure you were home. That your schedule was confirmed. She looked up at him with desperate eyes. Mr. Moretti, whatever they're planning, please, don't be there. Cancel the dinner. Go somewhere safe. If I run, they win. If you stay, they might kill you. Adrian reached across the table and took her hand. She flinched, but he held on gently. Look at me.
She did.
I'm not angry with you, he said. You understand that? You were protecting your family. I respect that. But I betrayed you. You were forced into an impossible situation. There's a difference, he released her hand. But now I need you to help me fix this.
Can you do that? How?
By telling me everything you know about the Rossi operation. Every name, every face, every place they took you, every conversation you overheard. Lena wiped her eyes. There were 3 of them. The 2 men who came to the gate, I never got their names. But the one who gave orders, the one who hurt me. She took a shaky breath. His name was Dante.
Dante Russo.
The name landed like a bomb. Vico, standing by the door, straightened.
Russo?
As in. Vincent Russo's nephew. Adrian's jaw tightened. The heir apparent. Vincent Russo ran the Rossi crew with an iron fist and a short temper. He'd been pushing into Moretti territory for months, testing boundaries. But sending his nephew to intimidate a housekeeper? That was personal. That was a message. What did Dante tell you? Adrian asked. He said your family had gotten soft. That you'd forgotten what real power looked like. Lena's voice steadied as anger replaced fear. He said by Friday night, everyone would know the Moretti name didn't mean anything anymore. Did he say how?
No.
But he laughed when he said it. Like it was already done. Adrian stood, his mind racing through possibilities. A hit on his home. An ambush during the mayor's dinner. Something public, something humiliating. Something that would destroy his reputation and his legitimacy in one move. But there was something else. Something Lena had said earlier that didn't fit. You said 3 of them, Adrian said slowly. 2 men at the gate and Dante. But Dante didn't come to the gate. How did you meet him? Lena's face went pale again. Lena, where did you meet Dante Russo? She looked at the locked door. At Vico. At the coffee cup she hadn't touched. Here, she whispered. I met him here. At Salvatore's. The room went silent. When? Adrian's voice was ice. Last month. He was having dinner with. She stopped. With who, Lena? Her eyes found his, and in them Adrian saw not just fear, but something worse.
Pity.
With Vico, she said. He was having dinner with Vico. The room didn't explode. It didn't need to. Adrian turned slowly, deliberately, to face the man who'd stood beside him for 8 years. The man who'd watched his back, eaten at his table, held his mother's hand at his father's funeral. Vico hadn't moved. His hand rested casually near his hip, but Adrian knew that stance. Knew what it meant when a man positioned himself between his boss and the only exit. Boss, she's lying. Vico's voice was calm.
Too calm.
She's desperate, looking for a way out. You know how this works. She'll say anything to. What did you order? Adrian asked quietly. Vico blinked. What? At Salvatore's. When you had dinner with Dante Russo. What did you order? I never. The osso buco, Lena interrupted. Her voice shook but held firm. You both had the osso buco. And a bottle of the 2015 Barolo. Dante made a joke about it being expensive. You said Mr. Moretti was paying. The silence stretched like a wire pulled too tight. I was conducting surveillance, Vico said. Keeping tabs on Russo's nephew, seeing what he was. You told him about my shipping schedules. Adrian's voice never rose above conversational. You told him which routes were vulnerable, which drivers could be bought off, which inspectors looked the other way. That's insane. Why would I? Because he's paying you better than I am. Adrian took a step forward. Or maybe he's blackmailing you. I don't really care which. What I care about is how long you've been selling me out to the Rossi crew. Vico's hand moved an inch closer to his gun. Don't. Marco appeared in the doorway behind him, his own weapon already drawn. You know you won't make it. For a moment, Vico looked like he might try anyway. Then his shoulders sagged. Not in defeat, in relief. Like a man who'd been holding his breath for months and could finally exhale. 6 months, he said. I've been working with them for 6 months. Adrian felt something cold settle in his stomach. 6 months. Half a year of secrets, of lies, of carefully orchestrated betrayals. Why? Why? Vico laughed, but there was no humor in it. Because you went soft, Adrian. Your father built an empire on fear and respect. You turned it into boutique hotels and farm-to-table restaurants. You went legitimate. We're still making money. Legal money.
Tax money.
Regulated money. Vico shook his head. The Moretti family used to own this city. Now you own some real estate and a seat at charity dinners. You shake hands with politicians and pretend you're one of them. And that's worth betraying me for? The Russos offered me a real position. Not head of security for a glorified landlord, a real seat at the table. They're building something, Adrian. Something powerful. Something that matters. Adrian studied the man he'd trusted with his life. You think the Russos will honor whatever deal you made? I think they're smart enough to recognize talent. You're not talent, Vico. You're a useful idiot. And the minute you've served your purpose, Dante Russo will put a bullet in your head and dump you in the river. Adrian moved closer. But you already know that, don't you? That's why you're still here. Still playing both sides. Waiting to see who wins. Vico's jaw tightened. What's the play for Friday? Adrian asked. What did you help them plan? I don't know the details. That was need to know, and apparently I didn't need to know. Bullshit. You gave them the gate codes. The security schedules. My calendar. You knew exactly what they were planning. I knew they wanted you vulnerable. exposed, Vico's eyes hardened. They wanted to hit you where it would hurt most, your reputation. Show the city that the great Adrian Moretti couldn't even protect his own home. A robbery. More than that. They're going to make it look like you've been running dirty money through your businesses. Plant evidence, tip off the feds, let the investigation destroy everything you've built. Vico smiled without warmth. By Monday, you won't be having coffee with the mayor. You'll be having your assets seized and your name dragged through every newspaper in the state. Adrian felt the pieces clicking into place. It was elegant, really. Brutal and efficient. The Rossi crew wouldn't have to kill him. They'd destroy his legitimacy instead. Turn his greatest achievement into his biggest liability. The mayor's dinner, Adrian said slowly. That's when they're planting the evidence. While you're entertaining in the main house, they'll be in your office. You're safe. Your private files, Vico shrugged. I gave them everything they needed. By the time you realize what's happened, it'll be too late. And Lena? What was her role in all this? Insurance. If something went wrong, she'd be the fall guy. The disgruntled employee who sold you out for her brother's debts. He glanced at her. No offense. Lena's hands had curled into fists on the table. You bastard, she whispered. You used us. Both of us. I used available resources. That's what professionals do. Adrian walked to the window, the only one in the room, looking out over an alley where morning light struggled through the shadows. He could call the police. Hand over Vico, explain everything, let the law handle it. But the law moved slowly. And by the time investigators sorted through evidence and testimonies, the Russos would have already struck. His reputation would be shattered. His organization crippled.
No.
This required something else. Marco, Adrian said quietly, take Vico to the warehouse on Pier 9. The old one, near the fishing boats. The one we're renovating? The one we're not renovating anymore. He turned back to face Vico. You're going to sit there until Friday night. No phone. No contact. Just you and your thoughts. And after Friday? After Friday, we'll see if the Russos come looking for you. If they do, you'll know exactly how much you meant to them. Vico's face went white. Adrian, wait. I'm done waiting. Adrian nodded to Marco. Get him out of my sight. Marco grabbed Vico's arm, but the man pulled back one more time. You can't win this, Adrian. Even if you stop Friday's operation, the Russos won't stop. They want your territory. They want your business. And they want you dead. Then they can get in line. Adrian's voice was ice. Because right now, the only thing I want is to find out exactly how deep this betrayal goes. And trust me, Vico, I'm very good at finding things. Marco dragged him out.
The door closed.
Lena was crying again, but silently now. Adrian sat back down across from her. I need you to do something for me, he said gently. Anything. Friday night, I need you to be exactly where you're supposed to be. In the house. Following your normal routine. You want me to help you trap them. I want you to help me protect what's mine. He met her eyes. Can you do that? She wiped her face. Straightened her spine. Yes, she said. I can do that. Adrian didn't sleep that night. He sat in his study, surrounded by 3 years of business records, contracts, shipping manifests, invoices, bank statements. Every piece of paper that documented the Moretti organization's transformation from criminal enterprise to legitimate empire. Somewhere in this mountain of documents was proof of Vico's betrayal. There had to be. But hours of searching had turned up nothing. At 4 a.m, Lena knocked on the door. I brought coffee, she said. And these, she held up a stack of old accounting ledgers. You asked me to help. These are from the storage room. The ones Mr. Calabrese told me to file away last year. Adrian took them, exhaustion making his hands clumsy. Vico had you file these? He said they were old records. Nothing important. Just taking up space in his office. She set the coffee down. But I remember thinking it was strange.
Why?
Because when I asked if I should organize them by date, he said no. Said to just put them in boxes and forget about them. She paused. People don't usually say forget about them when something's not important. Adrian opened the first ledger. Standard bookkeeping, columns of numbers, dates, transaction codes. Nothing suspicious. He flipped through pages, his tired eyes struggling to focus. Then he saw it. A shipping invoice dated 8 months ago. Moretti Transport Company, hauling furniture from a warehouse in Newark to a distribution center in Philadelphia. Standard route. Standard cargo. Except the signature at the bottom didn't match the driver's name in the manifest. Lena, Adrian's voice sharpened. Pull up the employee records. I need to know who drove Route 47 on March 15th. She moved to his computer, fingers flying across the keyboard. Marcus Webb. He's been with the company for 5 years. Clean record, always on time. And the signature on this invoice.
She squinted at it.
That's not his handwriting. Adrian grabbed another ledger. Found another invoice. Same route, different date. Different signature. They're substituting drivers, he said quietly. Using our trucks, our routes, but different people behind the wheel. Why would they do that? Adrian thought about Vico's words. They wanted you vulnerable.
Exposed.
If the Russos could use Moretti trucks to transport illegal goods, drugs, weapons, stolen merchandise, and then tip off the authorities, it would look like Adrian had been running criminal operations under the cover of legitimate business. They're not just stealing from me, he said. They're framing me. He spread the ledgers across his desk, comparing invoices and manifests. A pattern emerged. Every 2 weeks, on routes that crossed state lines, there were discrepancies. Different signatures. Different delivery times. Small changes that wouldn't raise alarms unless someone knew what to look for. How many? Lena asked. Adrian counted. 17. 17 shipments in the last 6 months that don't match our records. What were they hauling? According to these manifests? Furniture, restaurant equipment, construction supplies, he looked up. But I'm betting if we checked those trucks, we'd find something else entirely. Lena moved beside him, studying the documents. Her finger traced a line of numbers.
Wait.
Look at these invoice codes. Adrian leaned in. Each invoice had a reference number, standard practice for tracking shipments. But some of the numbers had an additional notation at the end.
Small.
Easy to miss. CD 17, Lena read. What does that mean? Adrian pulled up his company's coding system on the computer. CD stands for charity donation. We transport goods for nonprofits at reduced rates. Tax deduction. But these aren't going to charities, she pointed at the delivery addresses. These are going to commercial warehouses. In Rossi territory. They looked at each other. Son of a bitch, Adrian breathed. Vico's been using our charity program to move their merchandise. No questions asked, minimal oversight, and if anything goes wrong, it looks like I'm exploiting nonprofits for money laundering. He grabbed his phone and called Marco. I need you to pull every charity donation shipment from the last 6 months. Every address, every signature, every single piece of paper. It's 4 a.m, boss. I don't care if it's Christmas morning. I need those records now. He hung up and turned back to the ledgers. There was something else here. Something he was missing. The pattern was too clean, too organized. Vico was smart, but he wasn't a bookkeeper. Someone had helped him set this up. Lena, did Vico ever have meetings with the accounting department? Late nights, closed doors.
Not that I saw.
But she hesitated. He did have someone visit his office a lot. A woman. She'd come in through the back entrance, stay for an hour or 2, then leave. What did she look like? Professional. Always wore business suits. Dark hair, maybe 40. Lena closed her eyes, remembering. She carried a leather briefcase. Expensive. And she wore this perfume. Jasmine and something else. Very distinctive. Adrian felt ice spread through his veins. He knew that perfume. He walked to his filing cabinet and pulled out a photo from last year's holiday party. Found the face he was looking for. Is this her? Lena's eyes went wide.
Yes.
That's her. Who is she? Gloria Mendez. My accountant. Adrian set the photo down carefully like it might explode. She's been with me for 12 years. handles all the books for the legitimate businesses, has access to everything, bank accounts, tax records, financial projections. Oh God. If Gloria's working with Vico, then they don't just know my shipping routes. They know my finances. Every asset, every account, every vulnerability. He sat down heavily. They've had their hands in my operation for months, and I never saw it. Lena moved to the window, watching the city wake up. What do we do? Adrian looked at the ledgers spread across his desk. Evidence of betrayal, carefully documented and meticulously hidden. Vico had given the Russos access to his business. Gloria had given them the keys to his fortune. But they'd made one mistake. They'd kept records. We let them think they've won, Adrian said slowly. Friday night, they're expecting to plant evidence in my office. Fake documents showing I've been running drugs and guns through my shipping company. But you'll be ready for them. Better than that. We'll give them what they want. He pulled out a clean sheet of paper and started writing. Gloria thinks she knows where I keep my important documents. She's wrong. But we're going to create new documents, ones that lead straight back to the Russos. I don't understand. Adrian smiled without warmth. The Russos want to frame me for running a criminal empire. Instead, we're going to frame them for trying to frame me. By the time Friday night is over, every piece of evidence they plant will point to their operation, not mine.
How?
With these, he tapped the ledgers. Every false shipment, every forged signature, every fake charity donation, it's all documented. And it's all admissible in court. The Russos think they're building a case against me. Instead, they've been building a case against themselves. Lena's face showed something Adrian hadn't seen before. Hope. We can actually win this. Not just win. Adrian gathered the ledgers, his exhaustion replaced by cold determination. We're going to destroy them.
Completely.
Legally. And by midnight Friday, Vincent Russo and his entire crew will be begging the FBI for witness protection. He picked up his phone again. This time, he didn't call Marco. He called his lawyer. David? It's Adrian. I need you to file some paperwork. Quietly. Friday morning arrived cold and gray, like the city itself was holding its breath. Adrian stood in his office, watching his staff prepare for the mayor's dinner. Caterers carried silver trays through the main entrance. Florists arranged centerpieces. Everything looked normal, perfect, controlled. But in the study upstairs, surrounded by locked doors and digital recorders, the real preparation was happening. Gloria arrives in 20 minutes, Marco said, checking his watch. She called this morning to confirm she'd be dropping off the quarterly reports before the dinner. Perfect timing. Adrian adjusted his tie in the mirror. Make sure she has to wait in the study. Offer her coffee. Keep her comfortable. And when she starts asking questions, she won't. She thinks she's in control. Adrian turned to face his team, Marco, 2 federal investigators he'd been working with secretly for the past 3 days, and Lena, who looked pale but determined. Everyone knows their role. They nodded. The doorbell rang. Showtime, Adrian said quietly. He walked downstairs, taking his time, letting Gloria settle in. Through the security monitors in his office, he watched her enter the study, watched her accept the coffee, watched her eyes drift toward his desk, his filing cabinets, his safe. She was nervous.
Good.
He gave her 5 more minutes. Let her sweat. Let her wonder. Then he walked in. Gloria. Sorry to keep you waiting, he smiled warmly, like they were old friends. Big day. The mayor gets cranky if the wine isn't properly chilled. No problem, Mr. Moretti. She stood, briefcase in hand. Professional smile in place. I have the quarterly reports. Everything's in order. Profits are up 12% from last quarter. Excellent. You always take such good care of me. Something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. I also need you to look at something, Adrian continued, moving to his desk. He pulled out one of the ledgers Lena had found. I was reviewing old shipping records and found some discrepancies. Probably just filing errors, but I wanted your expert opinion. Gloria's smile froze. Discrepancies? Nothing major. Just some invoices that don't match our internal codes. He opened the ledger to a marked page. See this CD? 17 notation? That's supposed to be for charity donations. But these deliveries went to commercial warehouses. I'd have to check the original documentation. I did. That's the strange part. Adrian pulled out more papers. According to our charity program records, these shipments never happened. But according to the driver logs and fuel receipts, the trucks definitely made these deliveries. Gloria set down her coffee cup carefully. Mr. Moretti, I'm sure there's a simple explanation. I'm sure there is too, he smiled. That's why I asked the FBI to help me figure out. The color drained from her face. They were very interested in these records, Adrian continued, his voice still pleasant. Especially when I explained that someone had been using my company to transport illegal goods across state lines. Someone with access to my accounting systems and shipping schedules. I don't know what you're talking about. Gloria, Adrian's smile disappeared. I've known you for 12 years. You handled my father's books before you handled mine. So, I'm going to give you one chance to tell me the truth. Why did you help Vico and the Russos steal from me? She stared at him, trapped. Then her professional mask crumbled. They have my daughter, she whispered. The room went silent. What? My daughter, Sarah. She's 19. She was working as a cocktail waitress to pay for college. Gloria's hands shook. 6 months ago, she witnessed something at the club. Something she wasn't supposed to see. The Russos took her. Said if I didn't help them, they'd. Her voice broke. Adrian felt his anger shift, redirect. Where is she? I don't know. They move her every few days. They send me photos to prove she's alive, but I haven't seen her since March. And Vico? How does he fit in? He approached me 2 months after they took Sarah. Said he could help. Said if I cooperated with his plan, the Russos would let her go. Tears streamed down her face. I didn't want to betray you. You've been good to me, to my family. But she's my daughter, Mr. Moretti. She's my daughter. Adrian understood.
Of course he did.
Family always came first. The Russos knew that. They'd built their entire operation around it. Find the leverage point, apply pressure, watch good people break. The ledgers, he said gently. The false invoices. That was you. She nodded. Vico told me what to document, what to hide. He said they just wanted to skim some profits, move some merchandise. I didn't know they were planning to frame you until last week. What changed last week? Dante Russo called me. Said tonight was the endgame. Said I needed to make sure your safe was open during the mayor's dinner. She looked up at him with desperate eyes. He said after tonight, Sarah would be released. That this was the last thing they needed from me. He lied. Adrian pulled out his phone and showed her a photo, one Marco had taken that morning. A young woman with dark hair, sitting in what looked like a basement apartment.
Alive.
Unharmed. We found her 3 days ago. She's been in a rental property on the east side. Guarded, but treated well. Gloria's hands flew to her mouth. She's alive? She's safe. Federal agents picked her up 2 hours ago. She's in protective custody. The relief that washed over Gloria's face was almost painful to watch. Then confusion replaced it. But if you found her 3 days ago, why didn't you tell me? Because I needed to know how deep this went.
Who else was involved?
What the Russos were really planning. Adrian sat on the edge of his desk. And I needed you to play your part tonight. What do you mean? The safe. You said Dante wanted it open during the dinner.
Yes.
He said someone would be coming to plant documents inside it. Evidence of money laundering, drug trafficking. Enough to trigger a federal investigation. And after they plant this evidence, an anonymous tip to the FBI. By Monday, your assets would be frozen, your businesses under investigation. The Russos would offer to buy out your legitimate operations for pennies on the dollar while you fought the charges. Gloria's voice steadied as she explained. It was never about destroying you completely. It was about taking everything you've built. Adrian nodded slowly. It made sense. The Russos didn't want a war. They wanted a hostile takeover.
Clean.
Legal. Devastating. Here's what's going to happen, he said. Tonight, you're going to open that safe exactly like Dante asked. You're going to make sure everything looks perfect, accessible, ready. I don't understand. The documents they're planning to plant? They're not going to plant them. He pulled out a folder, thick, official-looking. These are real financial records.
But they don't connect to me.
They connect to Vincent Russo's shell corporations, his offshore accounts, his illegal operations. Gloria's eyes widened. You're going to frame them?
No.
I'm going to let them frame themselves. Adrian handed her the folder. When Dante's people break into my safe tonight, they're going to find these documents instead of the ones they prepared. And when they photograph them, copy them, and send them to the FBI as evidence against me, the FBI will trace them straight back to the Russos. Gloria actually smiled. My God, you're using their own plan against them. Poetry, isn't it? Adrian stood. So, tonight, you do exactly what Dante told you to do. Open the safe. Make it easy. And then you go home to your daughter and never speak about this again. What about Vico? Vico's already being handled. He's been very cooperative since we explained his options. Adrian walked her to the door. Gloria? After this is over, you're fired. She nodded, accepting it. But, he continued, I'm also setting up a college fund for Sarah. Full tuition, room and board. The least I can do for what you've been through. Gloria started crying again. Thank you. Thank you. After she left, Marco emerged from the adjacent room where he'd been recording everything. She's telling the truth, he said. About the daughter, about Vico, all of it. I know. Adrian looked at the folder Gloria had taken, the poison pill that would destroy the Russo operation. Make sure the federal agents are in position. I want them to see everything that happens tonight. And Dante? When he shows up? Adrian's smile was cold. Let him come. The mayor arrived at 7:30, right on time. Adrian greeted him at the door with champagne and charm, playing the perfect host. The dining room sparkled, crystal chandeliers, imported linens, centerpieces that cost more than most people's monthly rent. 12 guests sat around the table, laughing and talking, completely unaware that beneath the polished surface, a war was being waged. Lena moved through the room with practiced grace, refilling wine glasses and clearing plates. To anyone watching, she was simply doing her job. But Adrian saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes flickered toward the windows every few minutes. She was watching for them. At 8:15, his phone buzzed. A text from Marco, positioned in the security room, 2 vehicles. East Gate. For men total. Adrian excused himself from the table, citing a phone call about tomorrow's business breakfast. The mayor's wife laughed and told him to never stop working. If only she knew. He walked upstairs to his private office, the one connected to his study by a narrow hallway. The federal agents were already there. Agent Torres and Agent Chen, hidden behind a two-way mirror that looked into the study. They'd been in position since 6 o'clock, cameras rolling, recording devices active. Right on schedule, Agent Torres murmured, watching the monitors. 4 men approaching the south entrance. Professional. They know what they're doing. They should, Adrian said. I trained half of them. On screen. The men moved through his property like ghosts. They avoided the main cameras, stuck to the shadows, used the blind spots in his security system. Vico had taught them well. Too bad Adrian had changed the security system 2 days ago. Every angle they thought was safe was now being recorded in high definition. Every blind spot now had coverage. The federal agents had enough footage to prosecute for breaking and entering before the men even reached the house. There, Agent Chen pointed. That's Dante Russo, the tall one with the neck tattoo. Adrian watched the man who'd terrorized Lena, who'd held Gloria's daughter hostage, who'd orchestrated this entire operation with the arrogance of someone who thought himself untouchable. Dante moved with confidence, his face uncovered, clearly not worried about being identified. Why would he be? After tonight, the Moretti organization would be the one under investigation. Not him. The men reached the service entrance, the door Gloria had left unlocked as instructed. They slipped inside without tripping any alarms. Shouldn't we move in now? Agent Chen asked. Not yet, Adrian kept his eyes on the screens. Let them get to the safe. Let them touch the documents. I want their fingerprints on everything. The agents exchanged glances, but stayed quiet. Downstairs, Lena cleared the main course. Adrian's phone buzzed again. There in the study, heading for the safe. He watched on the monitor as Dante and his men entered his study. They moved efficiently, one man stationed at the door as lookout, two others sweeping for additional cameras or security measures. Dante went straight to the safe. He knows the combination, Agent Torres noted. Gloria gave it to him yesterday. Adrian watched Dante's gloved fingers spin the dial, along with a detailed description of what should be inside. The safe door swung open. Dante reached in and pulled out the folder, the one Adrian and Gloria had prepared. The one filled with financial records, shipping manifests, and bank transfers that would paint a very clear picture of criminal enterprise. Just not Adrian's criminal enterprise. He's photographing everything, Agent Chen said, watching Dante use his phone to capture page after page. He's documenting each piece of evidence. Good. Adrian's voice was ice. Make sure you're documenting him documenting it. For the next 10 minutes, the federal agents recorded Dante Russo carefully photographing documents that would destroy his uncle's organization. Records of weapons trafficking through shell corporations. Money laundering through fake charities. Bribes paid to city officials. Names, dates, amounts, all meticulously detailed. None of it connected to Adrian Moretti. All of it connected to Vincent Russo. He's putting them back, Agent Torres said, returning everything to the safe exactly how he found it. Of course he is. He wants the FBI to find them during their investigation. Wants it to look like I was hiding them. Adrian smiled without warmth. He just doesn't realize he's building his own prison cell. Dante closed the safe, spun the dial, and nodded to his men. They moved toward the exit, mission accomplished, completely unaware they'd just documented enough evidence to dismantle the entire Rossi operation.
Now,
Agent Chen asked, hand on his weapon. Now, Adrian confirmed. The agents moved with practiced precision. They'd coordinated with Adrian's security team. Marco's men were already in position outside, cutting off escape routes. The federal agents burst into the study just as Dante reached the door. FBI. Hands where we can see them. For a split second, Dante looked genuinely confused. Then his hand moved toward his waistband. Don't. Agent Torres had his weapon trained on Dante's chest. Whatever you're thinking about doing, don't. Dante's hands slowly rose. His 3 men followed suit, all of them calculating odds, measuring distances, wondering how this had gone so wrong. Dante Russo, Agent Chen said, moving forward with handcuffs. You're under arrest for breaking and entering, attempted evidence tampering, and conspiracy to commit fraud. You've got nothing, Dante snarled. We have everything. Agent Torres held up a tablet showing the recorded footage. We have you breaking into this residence. We have you opening that safe. We have you photographing documents. And we have every single photo you just took uploaded to your cloud storage. Dante's face went white. That's right, Adrian stepped into the study, his voice quiet but carrying absolute authority. Your phone automatically backed up those photos. Which means in about 30 seconds, your uncle is going to receive a notification that you've uploaded files to the shared family account. You son of a... And in about 30 minutes, federal agents are going to arrive at every Russo-owned property in the city with search warrants based on the evidence you just photographed. Adrian moved closer. Evidence that documents your uncle's entire criminal operation. Evidence with your fingerprints on it. Evidence you personally photographed and distributed. The realization hit Dante like a physical blow. You set us up.
No.
You set yourselves up. I just gave you the rope. Adrian's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. You hurt Lena. You kidnapped Gloria's daughter. You betrayed my trust and tried to destroy everything I've built. Did you really think I'd let that stand? My uncle will. Your uncle will be in custody before midnight. Adrian checked his watch. In fact, I'd say right about
Now.
As if on cue, his phone buzzed. A text from David, his lawyer. Russo's been arrested. Multiple federal charges. They're tearing apart his properties. Adrian showed Dante the message. By midnight, he said softly, your entire organization will cease to exist. Every lieutenant, every operation, every dirty dollar, gone. And you'll spend the next 20 years in a federal prison, knowing that you did this to yourself. Dante lunged, but Agent Chen was faster. He slammed Dante face first into the desk, cuffing him with professional efficiency. The mayor's still here, right? Agent Torres asked Adrian. Finishing dessert. Good. Let's keep this quiet until the guests leave. No need to ruin dinner. They led Dante and his men out through the service entrance, the same way they'd come in. Adrian watched them go, feeling the weight of the past week finally lift from his shoulders. Then he straightened his tie, checked his reflection, and walked back downstairs to his dinner party. The mayor's wife was telling a story about her grandson. Everyone laughed. Wine flowed. Music played softly in the background. And in the kitchen, Lena caught Adrian's eye. He gave her the smallest nod. It was over. The city learned the truth at 11:47 p.m. Every news station in the metro area interrupted their regular programming with breaking news. Massive federal raid on the Rossi crime family. Footage of agents storming warehouses, gambling dens, and legitimate businesses flashed across screens. Helicopters circled above Vincent Russo's mansion as FBI agents carried out boxes of evidence. Adrian watched it unfold from his study, the mayor and his guests long gone, champagne glasses cleared away, the house finally quiet. On 3 different news channels, reporters spoke breathlessly about the coordinated operation that had decimated one of the city's most notorious criminal organizations. Sources say the evidence came from within the organization itself, one reporter announced. Documents photographed and distributed by Dante Russo, the presumed heir to the family business, provided federal prosecutors with detailed records of weapons trafficking, money laundering, and political corruption spanning 5 years. Another channel showed Vincent Russo being led from his home in handcuffs, his face a mask of fury and disbelief. Russo declined to comment, but sources close to the family say he believes he was set up by a rival organization. He's right about that, Marco said from the doorway. Just wrong about which rival. Adrian turned off the television. Any problems with the cleanup?
None.
The feds have 47 people in custody. They've seized properties in 6 states. And the best part?
Marco grinned.
Every single piece of evidence traces back to the Russos. Not one connection to us. What about the planted documents? The ones Dante thought he was photographing? Federal agents collected them as evidence of the Russo operation. They're now part of the official investigation. Marco sat down. Boss, I've got to hand it to you. This was surgical. The Russos destroyed themselves, and we never fired a single shot. Adrian thought about his father, who'd built the Moretti Empire with violence and fear. The old man would have handled this differently. Bodies in the river, brutal public displays, wars that raged for months. But Adrian had learned something his father never understood. The law was a more powerful weapon than any gun. The reporters keep mentioning anonymous tips, Marco continued. About a dozen called in tonight, all pointing to specific Russo properties and operations. I'm guessing those came from someone with intimate knowledge of their business. I'm guessing you're right, Vico. Adrian nodded. He provided very detailed information about every Russo operation he'd worked with. In exchange for witness protection and a reduced sentence, he told federal prosecutors everything. Will he testify? He won't need to. The documents speak for themselves. Adrian stood and walked to the window. Below, the city stretched out like a circuit board, lights twinkling in the darkness. Somewhere in that sprawl, 47 people were sitting in federal holding cells, their empire crumbling, their future measured in decades behind bars. And somewhere else, people were sleeping peacefully, unaware that the balance of power had just shifted completely. What about Gloria? Marco asked. I spoke to her an hour ago. She's with her daughter. They're leaving the city tomorrow. Fresh start somewhere quiet. Adrian paused. I transferred $200,000 to her account. For everything she lost. That's generous, considering she helped betray you. She was protecting her daughter. I can't fault her for that, he turned back to Marco. Make sure no one touches her. She's earned her freedom.
Marco nodded.
And Lena? As if summoned, Lena appeared in the doorway, still wearing her service uniform, her face exhausted but relieved. The kitchen's cleaned, she said quietly. Everything's put away. Lena. Adrian gestured to a chair.
Seat.
Please. She hesitated, then sat on the edge of the seat like she might need to run at any moment. I owe you an apology, Adrian said. Sir? I put you in an impossible situation. If I'd been paying attention, if I'd noticed Vico's betrayal sooner, you and your brother never would have been caught in the middle of this. You couldn't have known. I should have known. You're part of my household. Your safety is my responsibility. He pulled an envelope from his desk drawer. This is for you. Lena opened it carefully. Inside was a check, $50,000. Mr. Moretti, I can't. You can and you will. Your brother's debt is paid. The Rossi crew can't touch him anymore. They don't exist anymore. But he'll need money to start over. Get him out of that neighborhood. Help him find legitimate work. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stop wearing long sleeves in July. Adrian's voice softened. Say you'll tell me if anyone ever threatens you again. Say you'll trust me to protect what's mine. I will, she wiped her eyes. I promise. Good, he stood. Take tomorrow off. Actually, take the whole week.
Paid.
When you come back, we'll discuss a raise. Head of household staff. You've earned it. Lena looked at the check, then at Adrian, then back at the check. Why are you being so kind to me? I helped them. I gave them your security codes, your schedule. Under duress. You were protecting your family. That's not betrayal, Lena. That's love. Adrian walked her to the door. Now go home.
Get some rest.
And tell your brother that if he ever needs a job, a real job, he can come see me. I've got warehouse positions opening up. The legal kind. After she left, Marco poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed one to Adrian. To the end of the Rossi family, Marco said. To the end of threats against ours, Adrian corrected. They drank in comfortable silence, watching the city's late-night news continue its coverage of the raids. By midnight, every major outlet was running the story. By morning, it would be national news. Adrian's phone buzzed. A text from Agent Torres. We found the gambling dens. The cage fighting operation. All of it documented exactly where your source said it would be. This case is airtight. Another buzz. This one from the mayor. Just saw the news. Impressive work. Lunch next week. And another from David the lawyer. Your businesses are completely clear. No investigation, no scrutiny. You're untouchable. Boss. Marco was watching him. You okay? Adrian looked at the messages, at the news footage, at the whiskey in his glass. He thought about Vico sitting in witness protection. About Gloria reunited with her daughter. About Lena finally safe. About Evan Torres getting a second chance. Yeah, he said quietly.
I'm okay.
The clock struck midnight. And in that moment, the city fell silent. Not from fear, but from the sudden absence of it. The Rossi threat was gone. The vultures had been caged. For the first time in months, Adrian's people could sleep without looking over their shoulders. The families will be watching, Marco said. The other organizations. They'll see what happened tonight and draw their conclusions.
Good.
Let them see what happens when someone touches what's mine. Without a single drop of blood spilled. Without a single violent act, Marco shook his head in admiration. Your father would be proud. Or confused. Maybe both. Adrian smiled. My father taught me how to fight. But my mother taught me how to win. He finished his whiskey. There's a difference. Outside, police sirens wailed as more arrests were made. The cleanup would continue for days. Assets seized, operations dismantled, lieutenants flipping on each other in desperate plea deals. But here, in this house, there was finally peace. Morning light filtered through the kitchen windows like a promise. Lena arrived at 6 a.m., earlier than Adrian expected, but not surprising. Some habits ran too deep to break after 3 years. She moved through the familiar routine of making coffee, the expensive Italian blend Adrian preferred, and by the time he walked in at 6:30, the kitchen smelled like home. "You're supposed to be resting," he said. Couldn't sleep, she poured him a cup without asking. The news is still running the story. Every channel. Adrian took the coffee gratefully. It'll run for weeks. Maybe months. The feds found more than they expected. How much more? Enough to implicate 2 city councilmen, a judge, and half a dozen police officers. He sat at the kitchen island. Vincent Russo didn't just run a criminal organization. He ran a network. And now that network is collapsing. Through the window, Adrian could see his grounds crew already at work, men with duffel bags and equipment moving purposefully across the property. To a casual observer, they looked like landscapers. But Adrian knew better. They were removing surveillance equipment, checking for bugs, sweeping every inch of his estate for anything the Russos might have left behind. Marco appeared in the doorway. "Boss, we've got a situation." Adrian set down his coffee. "What kind?" "The cleanup kind. There are reporters at the front gate."
About 20 of them.
"They want a statement about last night." "What did you tell them?" "That you had no comment." "But they're not leaving." Marco looked uncomfortable. "And there's something else. Evan Torres is here. Says he needs to speak with you." Lena's hand flew to her mouth. "Is he okay?"
"He's fine."
"Nervous, but fine. Should I send him away?" Adrian thought for a moment.
"No."
"Bring him to the study. And Lena? You should be there too." 5 minutes later, Evan Torres sat in the same chair his sister had occupied a week ago. He looked better than he had in his apartment, showered, shaved, wearing clean clothes. But his eyes held the haunted look of someone who'd seen his life nearly destroyed. "Mr. Moretti," Evan's voice shook. "I don't know how to, I can't." "Take your time," Adrian said gently. Evan took a shaky breath. "I saw the news. About the Rossi family. About the arrests." He looked up. "That was you, wasn't it? You destroyed them." "They destroyed themselves. I just helped them along." "Because of what they did to Lena." "To me." Evan's hands clenched into fists. "I'm the reason all of this happened. I'm the reason she got hurt. I was stupid and selfish, and I thought I could gamble my way out of my problems, and instead His voice broke. Lena moved to her brother's side. "Evan, it's over now. But it's not over for you. You lost your job, you." "She didn't lose her job," Adrian interrupted. "She got promoted." Evan looked confused. "What?" "Your sister is now head of household staff. Substantial raise, better benefits, and a performance bonus for exceptional service during difficult circumstances." Adrian leaned back in his chair. "She's earned it." "I don't understand. After everything I did, after I put her in danger." "You made mistakes. Bad ones. But you didn't betray anyone. You were exploited by people who prey on desperation." Adrian pulled out a folder. "Now the question is, what are you going to do next?" "I'm leaving the city. Getting as far away as possible. Starting over somewhere nobody knows me." "Wrong answer." Evan blinked. "Sir? Running doesn't fix anything. You'll carry this guilt wherever you go. Different city, same problems." Adrian opened the folder. "Here's what's going to happen instead. You're going to work for me." "I don't." "Warehouse supervisor. North facility. Legal operations only, inventory management, shipping logistics, quality control. $45,000 a year to start, with raises based on performance." Adrian slid the folder across the desk. "You'll work 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. You'll report to Marcus Webb, who's tough but fair. And you'll spend the next year proving that you're more than your worst mistake." Evan stared at the folder like it might bite him. "Why would you do this?" "Because your sister asked me to. Because everyone deserves a second chance." And because I need good people, and Lena says you're good people when you're not being an idiot, Adrian's voice hardened. But understand this. You screw up again, you're done. No third chances.
No forgiveness.
You owe money to anyone, you come to me first. You have problems, you ask for help. You make one more stupid decision that puts your sister at risk, and I'll make sure you regret it. Clear? Crystal clear, sir.
Good.
You start Monday, Adrian stood. Now go home. Spend the weekend with your sister. Figure out how you're going to be better. After Evan left, looking dazed and grateful, Lena lingered in the doorway. Thank you, she said quietly. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. He's your family. And you're my family now. Adrian returned to the window, watching the grounds crew finish their sweep. That's how this works, Lena. I protect what's mine. Even from themselves? Especially from themselves. The rest of the morning moved in practiced efficiency. Adrian dealt with the reporters through a carefully worded statement from his lawyer. Mr. Moretti commends the FBI for their diligent work in dismantling criminal organizations that threaten our city's safety. He has cooperated fully with federal authorities and looks forward to continuing his legitimate business operations without interference from criminal elements. Professional.
Distant. Perfect.
By noon, the grounds were clear. No surveillance devices, no hidden threats, no lingering traces of the Rossi operation. Adrian's security team had swept every building, every room, every corner of his property.
Clean.
At 2 p.m., Agent Torres arrived with paperwork. Final statements, he said, spreading documents across Adrian's desk. For the record, your cooperation has been invaluable to this investigation. My pleasure. I'm sure it was. Torres smiled slightly. For what it's worth, this is the cleanest takedown I've seen in 20 years. Usually when organized crime families fall, there's collateral damage. Innocent people caught in the crossfire. But this was surgical. I believe in precision. So I've noticed. Torres gathered the signed paperwork. One more thing. Vincent Russo is claiming you orchestrated the entire operation to eliminate a business rival. That you manipulated evidence, coerced witnesses, and used federal resources for a personal vendetta. Adrian's expression didn't change. Is he?
He is.
Of course, the evidence tells a different story. The evidence says his own nephew documented his criminal empire and distributed that documentation through his own phone. Hard to argue manipulation when the perpetrator is literally photographing his own crimes. Justice is beautiful when it's self-inflicted. Torres studied him for a long moment. You know what I think. I'm sure you'll tell me. I think you're the smartest criminal I've never been able to prosecute. Torres stood. But since all your current operations are legitimate, and since you've been an exemplary citizen helping us dismantle an actual criminal organization, I suppose I'll have to settle for that. I'll take that as a compliment. You should. Torres walked to the door, then paused. One more thing. Off the record. There's no such thing as off the record with federal agents. Fair point, Torres smiled. But I'll say it anyway. Your father ran this city through fear. You're running it through respect. That's progress, Mr. Moretti. Real progress. After he left, Adrian stood alone in his study. On his desk sat the evening newspaper, already running the Russo story on the front page. Crime family crumbles, the headline screamed. Below it, a photo of Vincent Russo in handcuffs, his empire in ruins. Adrian's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Well played.
See.
He stared at the message. See, Carbone. Another family, another organization, watching from the shadows. The message was clear. They'd seen what happened to the Russos. They'd drawn their conclusions. Adrian deleted the text and turned off his phone. Outside, the city continued its day. People worked, ate, lived, completely unaware that the balance of power had shifted overnight. That a war had been fought and won without a single shot fired. And in the kitchen, Lena hummed while she worked, her sleeves rolled up, her wrists healing, the fear finally gone from her eyes. That, Adrian thought, was worth everything. 3 days later, Evan Torres stood outside the North warehouse at 5:30 in the morning, lunchbox in hand, trying not to throw up from nerves. The building was massive, 3 stories of concrete and steel, with loading docks stretching the length of a football field. Trucks idled in the early morning cold, their exhaust creating ghost clouds in the air. Men moved with purpose, loading and unloading, their voices carrying across the pavement. Legitimate work. Legal work. The kind his father used to do before the accident that killed him. You Torres? A broad-shouldered man with graying hair approached. His name tag read, Marcus Webb, Operations Manager. Yes, sir. Don't call me sir. Makes me feel old. Marcus looked him up and down. You know anything about inventory management? Not really. Shipping logistics?
No.
Quality control? I can learn. Marcus grunted. At least you're honest.
Come on.
I'll show you how we do things. The next 12 hours were the hardest work Evan had ever done. Marcus ran the warehouse like a military operation. Everything had a place. Every movement had a purpose. Every minute mattered. Evan learned how to scan barcodes, track shipments, verify invoices, and organize inventory with a precision he'd never known existed. His back ached. His feet throbbed. His hands developed blisters from moving boxes. It was the best day he'd had in months. Not bad for your first day, Marcus said at 6 p.m. as the evening shift arrived. You didn't quit, didn't complain, and only screwed up the inventory codes twice. That's better than most. Thank you, sir, I mean Marcus. You got family picking you up? I'm taking the bus. Marcus shook his head. Not at this hour. Streets around here get sketchy after dark. Come on, I'll give you a ride. They drove in comfortable silence through the city. Evan watched the neighborhoods change, from industrial to residential, from broken streetlights to well-maintained parks. Can I ask you something? Evan said finally. Shoot. Why did Mr. Moretti give me this job? After everything I did, after the trouble I caused, why help me? Marcus was quiet for a moment. You know what Mr. Moretti told me when he called about hiring you? He said, this kid made mistakes, but his sister believes in him. And I believe in her, that's it. That's all it took. That's all. With Mr. Moretti, loyalty is everything. You're Lena's brother. That makes you family by extension. And he takes care of family. Marcus pulled up to Evan's building. But here's the thing. You screw this up, you don't just hurt yourself. You hurt your sister. You hurt her reputation. You hurt the trust Mr. Moretti placed in her judgment. Can you live with that? No, Evan said quietly. I can't. Then don't screw it up. Marcus handed him a card. My cell number. You run into trouble, any trouble, you call me. Day or night. Understand? Evan took the card like it was made of gold. I understand. That night, he climbed the stairs to his apartment, the new one, in a better neighborhood, paid for with part of the money Lena had given him. It was small but clean. Safe. The kind of place where you didn't hear gunshots at 3 a.m. He made dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta and sauce, and ate it at his small table while watching the news. The Russo story was still dominating coverage. 23 indictments. 17 guilty pleas. Trial scheduled for the next 2 years.
His phone rang.
Lena. How was your first day? She asked. Hard. Really hard, he smiled. I loved it. Yeah. Marcus is tough, but fair. The work is honest. Nobody's threatening anybody. Nobody's breaking legs over debts, he paused.
Lena, I'm sorry.
For everything. For being stupid, for getting you hurt, for... Evan, her voice was gentle. We don't have to keep doing this. You've apologized. I've forgiven you. Now we move forward. How do you do that? Move forward like none of it happened. I don't. I remember all of it. But I also remember that you're my brother and I love you, and people are more than their worst moments, she paused. Mr. Moretti taught me that. After they hung up, Evan sat in his quiet apartment and thought about second chances. About how close he'd come to destroying everything. About the rope burns on his sister's wrists and the fear in her eyes, when the Rossi crew had used him as leverage. He thought about $47,000 in debt, a number that had felt like a death sentence, now erased like it had never existed. And he thought about Adrian Moretti, who could have had him killed, who could have made him disappear, who could have done what any other organization would have done. Instead, he'd given him a job. The next morning, Evan arrived at the warehouse at 5:15. 15 minutes early. Marcus noticed. Eager. Trying to be reliable. Keep that up, you'll go far. Weeks passed. Then months. Evan learned the business from the ground up, every procedure, every protocol, every system. He worked overtime when asked, covered shifts when others called out, and slowly, steadily, proved himself. One evening, 3 months into the job, Marcus called him into the office. Sit down, kid. Evan sat, his heart pounding. Had he screwed something up? Missed a deadline? Made a mistake he hadn't noticed? You've been doing good work, Marcus said. Really good. The kind of work that doesn't go unnoticed. He slid a folder across the desk. Mr. Moretti asked me to give you this. Inside was a new contract. Assistant Operations Manager. $60,000 a year. Benefits. A real career path. I don't. Evan's voice caught. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep showing up early and working hard. Say you'll keep being the kind of man your sister believes you can be. Marcus stood and extended his hand. Say yes. Evan shook his hand. Yes. Absolutely yes. That night, he called Lena and told her the news. She cried. Happy tears this time. I'm proud of you, she said. I'm trying to be someone worth being proud of. You already are. After they hung up, Evan walked to his bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. Same face, same eyes, but something fundamental had changed. The desperation was gone. The fear was gone. The crushing weight of debt and bad decisions had lifted. He thought about the cage fights, about the gambling dens, about the moment he'd first borrowed money he couldn't repay, about how quickly everything had spiraled out of control. And he thought about Adrian Moretti, who could have punished him but chose to save him instead. Not because Evan deserved it, but because Lena had asked. That was power, Evan realized. Real power. Not the kind that came from fear or violence or intimidation. The kind that came from choosing mercy when you could choose vengeance. The kind that gave second chances to people who didn't deserve them but might become worthy of them. The kind that recognized a young man's potential even when that young man couldn't see it himself. Evan looked at his reflection and made a promise. He would spend the rest of his life proving Adrian Moretti's faith wasn't misplaced. Starting tomorrow. Starting now. Starting with every choice, every day, every moment he had left to make things right. The weight had lifted. And for the first time in a year, Evan Torres could breathe. 6 months after the Rossi family fell, morning light filled the Moretti kitchen like it belonged there. Lena moved through her routines with practiced ease. Coffee brewing, breakfast preparation, the small rituals that marked the beginning of each day. But something was different now. The tension that had lived in her shoulders for months had vanished. Her sleeves were rolled up, revealing wrists that had healed completely, leaving only the faintest traces of scars. Scars that reminded her of how far she'd come. Adrian entered at 7 o'clock, earlier than usual. He'd been traveling, business meetings in Chicago, contract negotiations in Philadelphia. Building his empire the right way, one handshake and signed document at a time. Welcome back, Mr. Moretti. Lena poured his coffee without asking. After 3.5 years, she knew exactly how he liked it. Good to be home, he accepted the cup gratefully. How have things been? Quiet. The good kind of quiet, she smiled. Evan stopped by yesterday. Wanted to show me his new apartment. 2 bedrooms downtown. He's talking about taking some business classes at the community college. Marcus tells me he's exceeded expectations. Says he's got a real future in operations management. He works hard. Comes in early, stays late. I think he's trying to make up for lost time. We all are. Adrian sipped his coffee, looking out at the grounds. The gardens were in full bloom, carefully tended, peaceful. Any problems while I was gone?
None.
The new security system works perfectly. The staff is happy. And you got 3 dinner invitations, the mayor again, a charity fundraiser, and someone named Carbone. Adrian's expression didn't change. Decline Carbone. Politely. Already did. Lena set a plate in front of him. Eggs, toast, fresh fruit. Mr. Moretti, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you do all of this? Not just for me and Evan, but the way you handled the Russos. You could have. She stopped, searching for words. You could have done things the old way. The violent way. But you didn't. Adrian was quiet for a moment, thinking about his father, about the blood and fear that had built the Moretti name, about the choice he'd made years ago to be something different. My father used to say that power comes from fear, he said finally. That if people are afraid of you, they'll respect you. And maybe he was right for his time, for his world. But I learned something he never did. What's that? Fear is temporary. The moment you show weakness, fear turns to rebellion. But loyalty. He looked at her. Loyalty lasts. And you can't buy loyalty with violence. You earn it by protecting the people who depend on you, by keeping your promises, by being someone worth following. Lena's eyes glistened. That's why people stay with you. Why Marcus has worked for you for years. Why your staff would do anything for you. It's why you're still here, even after everything that happened. I'm here because you saved my life. And my brother's life. You could have punished us, but you chose mercy instead. Not mercy. Justice. Adrian stood, walking to the window. The Russos got what they deserved. You and Evan got what you deserved, a second chance. There's a difference. His phone buzzed. A text from Agent Torres. Final Russo trial concluded. Vincent Russo, 35 years federal prison. Dante Russo, 28 years. Case closed. Adrian showed Lena the message. It's really over, she whispered. It's really over. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun climb higher over the city. Somewhere out there, Evan was probably already at the warehouse, inventory clipboard in hand, building the life he almost threw away. Gloria was with her daughter in Oregon, running a small bookstore, finally free from fear. Vico was in witness protection, alive but alone, living with the consequences of his choices. And the Russos, all 47 of them, were scattered across federal facilities, their empire reduced to cautionary tales and court transcripts. What happens now? Lena asked. For you, I mean, you've won. You've eliminated your enemies, protected your people, built something legitimate. What's left? Adrian considered the question. What was left? More hotels, more restaurants, more real estate deals. More politicians to meet, more contracts to sign, more careful expansion of his empire. The work never ended, it just changed shape. But that wasn't what she was really asking. I keep my promises, he said quietly. I protect what's mine. I make sure that nobody who works for me, who trusts me, who depends on me, ever has to be afraid again. That's what's left. And if someone tries what the Russos tried, then they'll learn the same lesson the Russos learned. His voice was quiet, but carried absolute certainty. You don't touch what's mine. Not my businesses. Not my properties. Not my people. Ever. Lena nodded, understanding the unspoken promise in those words. She was his people. Evan was his people. Everyone under the Moretti protection lived by a simple rule. Loyalty earned loyalty, and betrayal earned justice. I should let you eat, she said, moving toward the door. You have a meeting at 9, right? Lena? She turned back. Thank you, Adrian said, for trusting me, for staying, for believing that I'd make this right. You did more than make it right, Mr. Moretti. You gave us our lives back. After she left, Adrian sat alone in his kitchen, eating breakfast as morning light warmed the room. His phone buzzed with messages, business opportunities, meeting confirmations, the constant demands of running an empire. But for just a moment he allowed himself to simply be still, to appreciate the quiet, to recognize what he'd built, Not with fear or violence, but with careful strategy, unwavering protection, and the kind of power that came from keeping promises. His father's empire had been built on bodies and blood. Adrian's empire was built on something stronger, trust. And as the city woke around him, as his people started their days in safety and certainty, Adrian Moretti understood a fundamental truth his father never had. Real power wasn't making people fear what you'd do to them. Real power was making people believe that nothing could touch them while you were watching. Outside, the city hummed with morning traffic and human ambition. Politicians headed to offices. Business owners opened shops. Children walked to schools. Regular people living regular lives, completely unaware that the balance of power had shifted, that threats had been eliminated, that someone was watching over them. Not with malice. With purpose. Adrian finished his coffee and stood. Time to get to work. The empire wouldn't run itself, and there were always new challenges, new threats, new problems to solve. But as he left the kitchen and walked through his home, secure, peaceful, safe, he carried with him the knowledge that some things were worth more than money or power. Worth more than fear or reputation. Worth more than empires. The loyalty of good people. The safety of those who trusted him. The promise that as long as he drew breath, nobody would hurt what was his. "I'll rest when there's no more marks to find," he had told Lena once.
And he meant it.
Because that was the promise. That was the purpose. That was the legacy Adrian Moretti was building. One careful choice, one protected person, one kept promise at a time. The marks had been found. The accounts had been settled. And by midnight, that crucial midnight when everything had changed, the whole city had learned a simple truth. Some men rule through fear. Adrian Moretti ruled through something far more powerful. He ruled through the absolute certainty that he kept his promises. Always.
The end.